I'm live. I am reading out of Lord of the Horizon. It is a book, a far memory book by Joan Marshall-Grant. She died in 1989. She was born 1907, and she used to write books about her previous lives. 7 books she has written. This one plays again in ancient Egypt, and we continue the story of Ra-Ab, who we know from the eyes of Horus. He's now grown up, has children, a boy and a girl, and he is having a conversation. 11 is this chapter, Trampled Vineyard. Mary and I were walking through the vineyards in the cool of the summer evening when she gave a startled cry and pointed to a small field which lay to our right. "Look, Ra-Ab, what's happened to the vines? Some of them were uprooted and the rest so savagely hacked that it would be a long time before they again bore fruit. These vines were the private property of one of the gardeners, a man who had been in the service of my family for nearly 40 years. They were his special pride, and I knew that their destruction would give him great sorrow. Whoever has done this to Yak shall be severely punished." And as I saw the further extent of the devastation, my anger increased in intensity. Not only the vineyard had suffered, but also the garden beyond it. Vegetables had been trampled down. Most of the flowers were which edged the path had been uprooted. The petals of a clump of lilies and of patar showed like drops of blood among their bruised leaves. The main stem of a trumpet vine which covered the roof of the storehouse had been cut through, and the scented waxy flowers were already wilting. Then I saw that the door of the storehouse had been broken, and, obeying a sudden impulse, I pushed it open. The scent of spilled wine flowed out to meet me. 20 vineyards, which had been a present to Yak from my father, had been thrown from their stands, and all that remained of them was a welter of broken shards. "Yak!" I shouted. "Yak! Where are you?" My voice sounded very loud in the confined space, but only an echo answered me. As I strode out, leaving the door swinging on its leather hinges, I had a sudden desire to feel the weight of a whip in my hand, a whip which sang through the air to wheel the back of whoever had destroyed the work of careful years. I thought the house was deserted, for the shutters were closed, and again my shout of "Yak!" had gone unanswered. It was Mary who noticed that the door-string was not sealed. She lifted the hatch and went inside. I followed her. It was dark except for a few rays of light which came through chinks in the palm leaf thatch. The outer room was empty, and I should have turned back had not Mary gone forward to draw aside the curtain which concealed the entrance to the inner room. Yak was sitting on the bedplace, his head sunk in his hands. Only when Mary touched him on the shoulder did he look up, for he was so absorbed in his grief that he had not heard us. "We are so very sorry, Yak," said Mary gently. "We have come to help you." "We have come to do more than that," I said. "We have come to punish the man who did this. Tell me his name. Tell me which of my people has betrayed the oryx." "It was not one of us," he said. "Your people would never have done such a thing to me, your servant." "Tell me his name." "Bena, who came here for sanctuary from the leopard. But it is not only for my broken vines that I grieve. It is because that through Bena I have also betrayed you. He told me that you decreed that in his own village it was the headman, not he, who was guilty. The headman who would not lend him the bull. When Bena had broken everything I have built, he said that by your laws it was I, not he, who would be judged guilty. Perhaps I should have given him the wine." "Wine? What wine?" "The wine of the first pressing that I hoped you would accept on the anniversary of your marriage. Bena said I was a fool to want to give it to you, and that your that your wine stores were filled with rarer vintages than any I could offer. that my best I should keep for myself and my friends. The next day he returned with a basket of duck eggs and 4 pieces of honeycomb, and I offered them as barter for the wine. Perhaps I was too hasty with him. I grew angry and said that what I would not give him as a free gift could not be taken from me by bribes. And then we exchanged words to which courtesy was not even a distant kinsman. That same evening his sister came to me, saying that she wished to apologize for her brother. I told him, she said, that he was a fool to misunderstand you. I understand why you dared not sell the wine. Had you done so, the Aurex would have taken your land away from you. Naturally, through the law of the tribe of the 10th part naturally, though the lands of the tribute of the 10th part is outwardly upheld, a man in the Aurex does not keep his land unless he buys private favor. Will you tell me how much honeycomb I should send to the nomarch on his anniversary, so that I shall be allowed to continue to keep my bees? Yek sighed and paused a moment before continuing. Again I failed my nomarch, he said sorrowfully. Instead of trying to make her understand that our laws are not corrupt, and that in our nome no one need buy their peace, I told her that she had a spirit which would befoul the body of a toad, and should she again utter falsehood about our laws and those who upheld them, I should try to persuade my dog, amiable as it is, to hurry her departure. I passed that woman's husband this morning. He spat at me and cried out, "If you were not too dry and wizened even to be acceptable to the vultures, I should break your miserable carcass." Which dared to call my wife a toad? Hurry, old man, run fast on your spindle shanks, or I may forget to be tolerant of your obscenity. I pretended not to have heard him and walked on, careful not to hasten my pace. He stood there, roaring with laughter and jeering at me, while he spat at me with filth from a meadow. I considered it my duty to report their conduct to the overseer under whom they are working. Their reply to this action of mine you have already seen. I seemed to hear the overseer from the town in the south saying, "It will be a risk," and the memory of my confident answer increased the bitterness I had already felt towards the 3 who had betrayed our hospitality. Tomorrow I shall choose among my best vines those which at the right season shall be transplanted to your vineyard. Full wine jars shall replace those broken in your storehouse, and every reparation shall be made for the damage done by those whom I unwisely made my guests. It is I who should make reparation, said Yak. I know that in every man there is both good and evil, but from these 3 it was only the evil which I called forth. For this I am ashamed and in sorrow, and a man so foolish as I does not deserve the pleasures of a vineyard. Leave my possessions as you see them now, so that they may serve to remind me again if I fall into pride. When I, with my own hands, have made whole again that which is broken, perhaps I shall become wiser, or at least not be so stupid. The guilt is not yours, but mine, I said. If I bring a wild leopard into my house, do I blame my son when it bites him? It was I who brought destruction to your vineyard, and I who must make it whole again. It was I who was proud, thinking that I was more wise, more just than the nomarch of the leopard. These 3 shall go into exile. I shall send them on the grain barge, which is even now being loaded for the land of gold. On our way home, Mary said, "You're going to send them away, Ra-Ab? You're going to admit that you have failed?" "At least I'm not so blinded by pride," I said bitterly, "that I have not the courage to admit failure. Pride made me bring them here. Pride, do you understand, Mary? I believed, and I still believe, that there is good in every man if only one can find a voice to quicken it. I found it pleasant to believe that I had that voice. I might have been justified in bringing them here if they had been able to injure no one but myself. That was the argument which my father used when I wanted to keep a leopard cub when I was 11. He said it might bite me, and I replied that I shouldn't mind, for it would be my cub. Then he reminded me that it might bite Kia's too. I had to admit that, for I knew she would insist on playing with it. I have not the decency which I had at 11, for now I let my friend suffer at the claws of a leopard's cub I could not tame. I never thought either of us would have to hide behind pretense, Mary, but now you will have to pretend. Pretend that the Nomarch, your husband, is not a failure. Ra-Ab, my husband, is going to sit under that palm tree and listen to me instead of talking a great deal of nonsense. It is difficult to go on being dramatic, even to oneself, when the audience will not accept the play as tragedy. I sat down, feeling miserable and something of a fool. If you send them into exile, said Mary firmly, you will lose confidence in yourself. I shan't lose confidence in you, for you can't be successful all the time, however great a person you are. The next time people come here asking for sanctuary, you might turn them away if you'd lost confidence, which would be a pity if they happen to be our kind of people after all. And if you didn't turn them away, you would be much more anxious about them than was necessary. You don't want me to keep them here, do you, Mary? Yes, I do, at least until they have had a third chance. I think it was really our fault as much as theirs. You and I believed that if only one was nice to people, they would always be nice back. But I think people have got to grow used to niceness, as people who are starving have to be fed gradually. We forgot that these three had been brought up to believe that kindness is only prompted by expediency, that the strong man always forces others to obey him, and that those who do not demand obedience are weak and should be despised. They had never been taught to make their feelings obedient to their will. You don't blame an animal for having less power of reasoning than a man, and yet we blame these people for not seeing the same truths to which we have been accustomed since we were children. What would you do with them? I'll tell you in the morning. I'd like to think about it in sleep before deciding. In the meantime, I should send soldiers to go to collect them. They could be put in the old prison for tonight, and it won't do them any harm not to have anything to eat, only water and stale bread. She stood up, smiling down at me. We'd better go home now, Ra. You promised to tell Amenemhet the quail chick story before you said good night to him. I felt much more cheerful. Do you think we shall be able to cure them? I expect so. After all, we haven't really tried yet. And if we fail, we'll think about that when it happens. So that was the end of chapter 11. And chapter 12, Exile's Village, is coming later.